Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I see many familiar faces and some people new to this institution, so thank you very much indeed. My name is James Ulak. I'm the Senior Curator of Japanese Art at the Freer and Sackler Galleries. And as was mentioned, I'm a co-curator with Dr. Furuta Ryo for this exhibition. This day has been a long time in coming, I can assure you. Sotatsu is not a household name, but he should be. He's probably the most important Japanese artist that you've never heard of. You know about Hokusai and the Great Wave, but from today I want you to start talking about Sotatsu and really great waves in the plural. In this exhibition, we follow the evolution of an artisan, a craftsman, who created and designed fine papers for calligraphers, who repaired ancient illuminated religious texts, who operated a fan shop in the heart of early 17th century Kyoto. He was a townsman, a commoner. He had no aspirations for founding a multi-generational dynasty, nor did he. Claims of him standing at the head of a lineage are really latter-day constructs, and yet, as you will see, his style of looking influenced generations, even into the present. There is a real paucity of biographical detail about Sotatsu. We don't know when he was born. We don't know when he died. We put his areas of activity roughly between 1600 and 1640. We first really catch sight of him in the repairs he did on a very famous 11th century, 12th century sutra. And from then, around 1600 until 1615, as you will see in the exhibition, his notable collaborations with the great calligrapher and arts impresario Hon'ami Koetsu. Sotatsu moved quickly in an era of considerable social mobility and seemed to parlay that relationship with Koetsu into introductions to the aristocratic class and indeed into the chambers of the imperial household itself. Suddenly, in the 1620s, we see him emerge full-blown as a personality. One of my favorite films in the past 5 or 6 years, 20 Feet from Stardom. I think that summarizes much of Sotatsu's career. He was a backup singer, a very important person who created the backgrounds for more important people, and then finally, his voice emerged with great singularity in the 1620s, and then he fades from the scene in the late 1630s. We see him emerge not as a decorator writ large, but as a full-blown painter. As you study the exhibition, you will grasp his feel for materials and his evident delight in seeing wet, manipulated pigment itself, which he makes the featured player. This exhibition is designed to lead you, perhaps perversely, from the great masterpiece, and then take you back in time to see Sotatsu first as a craftsman, a paperman, a fan maker, as a collaborator with a great calligrapher, and someone who reinterprets the ancient classic literary themes. That's all on the first floor, which we'll walk you through later. And then we see his remarkable work on the second floor in monochromatic ink, using, with incredible skill, a technique called tarashikomi, of pooling wet on semi-dried ink and allowing a certain serendipity to give form to figures. Then we see the work of his studio, perhaps several decades after his death, in a section called the Inen Garden. The Inen seal was a studio seal used by Sotatsu sometimes, and more often posthumously by his studio. And you see a trend developing in great interest in botanical life and gardens, and that studio then capitalized on that trend. And then we see a series of homages to Sotatsu by later artists, all treating this idea of the waves. And as mentioned in earlier comments, from there we invite you to look into rediscovery, where we see Sotatsu's real explicit influence on modern painters, in particularly the early 20th century. I would also like to draw your attention to an exhibition in the Freer, curated by my colleague Ann Yonemura, Bold and Beautiful, which uses the opportunity of this exhibition to show you an incredible treasure trove of paintings inspired by Sotatsu during the Edo period. So when you're finished here, which will be a long morning, I encourage you to walk over to the Freer and see that as well. It's a real strong combination. Sotatsu emerges at a moment in Japanese history when considerable social mobility allows this movement through the social strata. And as I mentioned before, he can claim incredible commissions in the 1620s. Why should we care about this artist? There are a number of interconnecting subplots that we could talk about here, but my own 2 cents is this. Sotatsu appears at a moment in time when a whole society is shifting. The Edo period begins. Military power consolidates and takes over once for all. The nobility, the class which nurtured, protected, and interpreted a whole classical tradition of literature and its illustration, was left powerless. But Sotatsu arises, and he's not the only one, but he's the major one, and gives new power to old images. You will go into the exhibition and you'll see in the second room a beautiful pair of screens from the Imperial Household Collection. And on those screens are fans. And each fan has an illustration on it. And each of those illustrations is a quote. It's a quote from a larger body of work of which there's only one of a kind. A hand scroll created in the 12th century, a painting created in the 14th century that no one but the aristocrats held. But because Sotatsu had access to those, he extracted them, quoted them on fans, and created this marvelous form of visual dissemination. So beginning with Sotatsu, you see the phenomenon of everyone with some means in Japanese society being able to flaunt the mantle of a unified past. Even though they didn't know the whole story, they could have, if you will, their Nats jersey or cap on. It's the idea of ownership through a fragment of the visual. That, I think, is what is his greatest contribution.